And people wouldn't just be forensic scientists, because they'd also be, like we're talking about balanced job complexes in which something like forensic science you're not going to have within that institution, the disempowered jobs. So you're going to have these people functioning within other disempowered jobs in other economic institutions, right?
No, there's disempowered jobs in forensics. There's the guy who has to code data all day. I mean,
sure.
there's crap jobs in every line of work.
Yes, it's not. Yeah.
But I guess some are more empowered than others, so you have to cross, like have people doing functions in different economic institutions.
In some, yeah.
Which, as a checks and balances thing, we might want to do with cops intentionally.
Well, which is why I'm saying that we'd set up different roles for the cops internally. So yeah, with the depending, I mean, maybe these detective type folks are just cops who have this community service role in addition, and who have term limits, etc. But I mean, one thing that we're taking away, remember, in this society, we're taking away any kind of economic incentive for people to get convictions. Okay, and this is going to be one of the biggest changes we're going to see in a second when we talk about courts. But in the case of police too, you don't get praised for how many people you arrest, and you certainly don't get a raise for how many people you arrest, right? I think the more people you arrest, the more suspicion you come under in a radical society, just like pretty much in today's society, if we even knew what cops were doing the most arrests. Some communities, now in my neighborhood, if you talk to the black folks in my neighborhood, they can tell you all the cops, and they can tell you a pretty good approximation of how many arrests they've made this year. They know it really well. That's something they've paid attention to. That's a part of a culture that's being constantly and daily oppressed. I don't see why the rest of us aren't trying to develop this consciousness. I've been fucked over by these same cops, and when I get fucked over by those cops, the folks in my neighborhood start going, "Oh yeah, who did it?" And then when I tell them the name, they know all about this guy. You know, like I was like, "Holy shit, you know everybody else that he screwed over?" And they're like, "Hell yeah, I can name them if you want." You know, there's something that these are a lot of the checks and balances that are going to come around naturally if we're going to have social change, and we're going to learn lessons from oppressed communities in order to be able to have any pretense of having liberated our own. So we've taken away the economic incentive from detectives, and I don't want to get too much into the investigations part, but now we've got somebody, and we're pretty damn sure that the detectives and whatever sort of institution or council we've decided gets to decide says, all right, we're pretty sure that this person committed that murder. We've got a lot of evidence. We've got a ton of evidence. They, of course, don't get to say that they did it. They just get to say that this person now has to stand trial. So now we're in the court system. Now we've got to find a way to deal with this. I've been thinking a lot about the court system because I've been thinking a lot about trying to prepare this talk. And what I see is that in principle, our court system is really amazing. I'm having trouble coming up with criticisms of most of the elements of our court system as it is structured. Not as how it's used, as it's structured. We've got this adversarial method of trying people. Go ahead.
We've just got one judge who's in control of so much. You know,
there are problems. But let's look at the positive elements that we might want to keep.
Jurisprudence is a really good idea, I think.
In what way?
Well, just that, if someone is being accused of a crime, it isn't just this one judge who, may not live in that community, but it's the people from the community, looking at the evidence. And I guess you do get into issues of if they're biased and maybe they have a grudge against this person. But, I do feel like the idea of, being tried by, your peers is, I think that's, not necessarily a bad idea.
Yeah, not only judged by your peers, but by 12 of them, or maybe we'll switch the numbers. Maybe if we want to make it even harder to convict somebody and protect somebody's liberty more, then we'll make it 20 or whatever. But they all have to agree that beyond a reasonable doubt, you did this thing. Yeah. Just to convict you. And this has nothing to do with punishment yet, but just to convict you, they all have to agree. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
Kind of in the same vein, we would also have to deal with, now in our society, if a jury decides that they don't want to observe the law, they can. Isn't there something like
Yeah.
And so that would be something we would have to look into.
Leeway within juries. It's an interesting idea. I mean, I don't. Well, we can always find ways to make it more liberal. We can more libertarian. We can always find ways to make it harder to convict people. What we want to do is find a system that actually somehow finds balance and does is able to say, okay, well, yes, this person did it. We're almost 100% positive that they did it. Beyond any reasonable doubt, we're certain that they did it, and we all are. Now we've got the judges. Here's another problem. We've got people who are legal experts, but I'm not so sure that even in our society where there's some semblance of election of judges and stuff, that just be, I mean, they're legal experts. They can prove that. They can pass the tests about the laws. They know how to look things up. But they're judging, and they're using opinion. So more direct and more involved election of judges would be one thing. Possibly having multiple judges. We're having much fewer trials, so why not have a couple more judges on panel at each trial to add a little bit more of an element there. A little bit more of an element of maybe having another body that just sort of oversees, a body of elected people who just kind of oversees the process of a trial and makes sure that it looks over the shoulder of those judges. What's one of the biggest problem that what would we think is the biggest problem with the court system today and the way people are run through it?
Slow.
It's too easy.
Well, it's slow, but
People involved in it, like if you're trying the court system, a lot of people have no idea of the way laws work.
I mean, like jurors.
No, like if you're a defendant, I know that like a lot of the problem is that maybe you don't even know what your rights are, what to ask for, or
Right.
what you're being tried for, or why. I mean, that's a big problem.
Yeah, so not even knowing what your rights are and the way that you're allowed through the system, what is at your fingertips as far as defense and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, that's a big one, I think, and that's something that we would need to guarantee against. But we could do this by writing things into policy, fairly simply. Go ahead.
The whole concept of the district attorney really bothers me. This guy who's out there, basically, his job is to sit there and, he didn't see what happened. Just sit there and make fault constantly and try to dig under.
Right.
If you have the place of the attorney, I mean, basically trying to convict everybody.
Technically, philosophically, in our legal system, what is the district attorney's job? What is the prosecutor's job?
Represent the people.
It's to represent the people, but it's actually to go about things fairly. It's actually to say, well, it's actually to be able to draw a line and say, we don't have enough evidence. We're not going to push this. It isn't to always, always, always vigorously advocate for the prosecution. It's to advocate for the public and to advocate for some semblance of truth or fairness, right? Now, this doesn't happen. Why doesn't this happen now?
They're concerned with winning.
They're concerned with winning, and why is that?
Because they want to keep their job.
They want to keep their job, and they want to move their job up. It's that economic incentive. It's that social incentive. We need a society where we don't say, hey, great job, I'm glad that you got 100 convictions this year compared to your 50 last year. If you got a conviction, it's got to be because it was necessary. And we're certainly not going to, again, reward you monetarily or really any other way for, increasing the number of convictions that you have. So we take that motive away.
I just wanted to say two things. One, to speak to that, have the prosecutorial misconduct to actually have a real, penalty. Because now it's prosecutor can,
Okay.
be accused or found to be have not conducted that investigation or what have you in the right way, and then the next week they're just on another case.
Yep.
So is that, and then I wanted to speak to what Kendra was talking about, just as far as legal knowledge, and when we're talking about judges and everything, and how we have legal experts. And I think that one thing that we could address in this society would be to have all citizens have a baseline knowledge of the legal system, what civics or something is supposed to be. People know what their rights are from very young age in our society. They know okay, if I get in this situation, whatever. So that's
What their opportunities are. Excellent.
And why couldn't you, when you pick a jury, pick the DA and the judge for every single time?
Could possibly be. There's another way that we might really, really be able to get even more control, especially with the DA thing, I think. And even if it isn't every time, at least, with just to extend to the DA, this accountability. If you screw up, you don't get to do it again, but maybe even something bad happens. But also, in order to get in that position in the first place, we have to choose you.